Yeah, sick. Alright, so I'm going to be just discussing Tibo and stepping. Tibo's stepping has a lot of things going on, and it's really cool. Initially, there is a similarity with most distressor systems of being upright and walking around circles and shapes, something along these lines. It starts to differ from at least modern interpretations of these things, as there is a direct connection to Italian and German fencing of the period, because Thibault started with such, then went over to Spain, then went Spanish fencing, but he has no fear of going into traditional lunging positions. He has no fearing to going into leg and foot positions that are intentionally avoided by some other authors for stylistic purity. He'd rather win. The stepping that you read from about chapter 4 onwards will look very distressor-like because he's starting from the start there. The stepping as things get more aggressive and you're no longer just subjecting to the outside along the inside quadrilateral, I don't know, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but you're going off, instead of walking here's Zachary, here's Alexander, instead of walking up these lines, he starts getting more linear and more aggressive, and even coming through here, then diving across to get closer to Zachary and beating them. You have a lot of positions that are very girata-like. You have a lot of positions that are very passing lunge-like. And you have a lot of positions that are very traditional lunge-like. How we get into those is through a tremendous breakdown of the step and lunge and how we traverse through space in a broken down capacity that rivals most, if not all, other authors. And I have been lucky enough to see a lot of examples of other texts talking about Tibo since then, where you look at like Brucius or some other French authors. I wish I remembered them off the top of my head, where they directly quote some of the actions that come from him because of just the sheer audacity to break it down like such. So let's have a look at my feet, look at my legs. A lot of the time when you're initiating actions, you're going to be lifting a leg. Now, most people's first read of Tibo will involve them standing stark upright and something like this. Now, if you look at the position I have right now, too long, you may see a resemblance in Donald Trump's lean. Don't do that, that's bad, that's dementia. Now, got it. Pulling your hip in and C-shaping through here. You'll notice that the waistline of most of the clothes in Tibo is actually horizontal. If your natural waistline by your clothes is tipping forwards or back, you have too much of a tip back, too much of a tip forwards. Astounding, right? There's also this slight roundedness of the shoulders that could be due to postural issues or how the clothing sits, because anatomically we're meant to sit exactly like this, but this occurs for myriad of reasons. You see this kind of pull in and this curling in most of the positions. This changes how you pick your feet up and how your weight manipulation occurs. For Thibault, the weight manipulation of your body and how you're on your base of support is intrinsic to everything that comes from that and flows from it. You have, let's pretend this is the line. You have a position somewhat like this, and you fence from here. This is how a lot of interactions start until you get further in the book and he's countering less distressor-like positions. To lift the foot, I'm going to do this side on. To lift the foot, that starts from the pelvis lifting. This will mean that the origin of your rectus femoris and other fucking quad muscles is going to be higher up, allowing there to be space for it to pull the leg up. There's a lot of straightening until there isn't. This means that my center of gravity is currently over my left foot, which means my center of gravity is currently within the base of support. The base of support is the imaginary shape created by all points of contact with the ground. As long as the center of gravity is within that shape, right now it is the shape of my foot, I can't fall over. If I put it out of that, I fall over and I enter a falling phase. This is important because as you do actions, and you do fencing actions, you will be able to do a single action sternly or elegantly or intelligently from your lift. So as you lift off, and all of a sudden you hit like a balance equilibrium, that is a whole distinct phase. There's a whole distinct moment in your life. It is a whole distinct tempo. It is a whole distinct action. There is a commitment there. You can commit to an action like thrust, or you can commit to a parry, or you can commit to a circle parry, whatever, right? Or you can commit to inaction. Inaction as a decided action is an action. You have a single card you can play on your lift. This is a nervous system quirk that Thibault didn't truly know how to explain, but he did know how to say, this is as it is, move on with your life, and just abuse the fact that it exists. This continues with when you are mid-flight, and you're moving and you're balancing and choosing where you want to go, as long as you haven't committed to a lack of equilibrium or to your true fall, you can kind of just do things with your hands quite firmly, if you wish, and quite daintily and quite dexterously. You can make as many hand interactions as you like before you hit your falling phase. Now, when you hit your falling phase, your body is prepping and getting ready to experience the fact that you are going to crash into the fucking ground. You're about to create a new point of contact with the ground. Your base of support is about to change, and as soon as that occurs, your body's going to be then trying to create equilibrium for its balance, and what the fuck is it doing with your center of gravity in that base of support? As it's doing that, it shuts off a lot of the signals. And then whatever action you were committing to, whether it be an action or inaction, is locked in until you land and recover from that landing. This is very important. That is the golden moment that you feel people go phew, and you feel them want to be stuck, and they're stuck in animation. What he's abusing is the fact that everyone's lift mid-flight drop is distinctly 3 actions. You can try your fucking hardest to skip the middle, to go faster, but it means that you are suddenly allowed to do an action on lift and an action on falling. And you have no chance of edit or change. This is incredibly understood or misunderstood or underutilized in fencing. Because then you look at something like Fabris, where he explains to lift your foot in reaction to someone else lifting their foot for their actions, and you will always time a very fucking beautiful counter thrust. It's because when you lift, by the time that you realize they've lifted and you realize that they're about to, like, they're doing an action, and they're doing it quite vigorously or fast, you have time to go, oh, and you lift, and you have time to, oh, what am I meant to do? And go in. And by the time that you've chosen what to do, most people have hit their landing phase and they're locked in. And you get to go, and do the fastest flinch intelligently of your life. And you feel amazing every time. And we can break that and make that even nastier with blade interactions that control and constrain and subject their blade. And all of a sudden, lift here makes sense because I've got a myriad of counters that live on any committed action that start from here. Any committed action that goes towards me. This is the first handful of chapters where there's fencing occurring. Feints and direct attacks into this shape. And then the mutations upon this. And then yieldier and more C-shaped like attacks from there. Then you have sentiment, so any attacks on the blade initially to begin with, then returning actions, and the rest of fucking things, right? So I've got this myriad of, well, this is how I counter. I'm here, I'm below your sword, you do an action or two, and I go, hup, hup, done. And I finish that off. Then, as I put my weak on your strong, I have a myriad of counters from there. You find all these in the book. I'm going through the journey. Then I have a myriad of counters as I degraduate my blade, graduate their blade. And I take this position and I start rotating like Williams and I'm doing this and I'm going through my mid-flight. Then I have a myriad of counters that happen when I'm about to hit my falling phase. And then finally I have my last counters that happen as I hit my falling phase. So in the act of taking a step, I've gone through multiple layers of I will counter what you present and I will progress with an overall game plan if you don't present anything. And you layer those over and over and over, and you can chase someone across the field and never hit them if all they're going to do is go backwards. That's cool. And you just keep reapplying the first steps. These shapes can end up with suddenly giratas or girata-like shapes. These steps can end up a little more direct towards the person, where instead of here I subject to second instance, I can step to here, which is a bit more of a traditional fencing position. Something like this, or this, something like that, who cares, something. I can use the manipulation of my weight from one leg to the other to crunch distance. You're a little bit closer, you've stepped in on my first instance and you're closing the distance. I don't need to step to here, I can fucking step in here. And all I've done is change from here to here. But something like this, and I can go up. And that's where you get the little hidden gems where it's like, oh, this is definitely from, especially German and Italian fencing. Because when he's prepping and working on his availability to do a lift and then mid-flight, he is doing stuff like this. Or maybe he steps in does an action, then an action. This is an upright straight knee variation of something Gigante, Capoferro, Fabris, Maya-like. Even later Italian. Look at people like Levi Fontaine. And he's doing this and this rocking back and forth. So he's just doing it upright. And you get this tremendous distance crunch without any commitment of weight and commitment of action. Also, to lift your leg, you start to feel, oh, when I'm middle weighted, now I need to do an action to lift this foot up intelligently. That action is to un-middle weight. I need to lift this intelligently. I need to un-middle weight. If I'm leaning forwards and I still want to use the front leg and I want to skip my mid-flight because I'm at the distance where the next step is going to fucking just win, I go front weighted and a step like this occurs, or a step like this occurs. Maybe I get to here and go, so that I can have a shorter lunge by being already leaning forwards. And I use shorter not purely by distance by a ruler, but distance of time and tempo. All these break aparts, all these let's open the tempo as large as it goes, layers with blade interactions that cause larger shapes. The quillions having to circle your pointer around. You want to disengage when my quillions are past your tip. You're going to have a big ass disengage and I'm going to dive through that tempo, fucker. And it feels like you're doing very typical, grandfathered by a gripper Italian fencing there. Because it just goes and slots into the tempo. These are the parts of Thibault's footwork which I'm not seeing people talk about. And I feel like that's a great disservice to it, because it becomes overly simplified or even satirized. I also, for my first 6 months, first read through of Tibo, did the funny penguin walk. We're all better than that now. Let's progress. The last thing I want to leave on is how to progress with Thibault's footwork and fencing. And what I mean by that is, there's an artifact of trying to look like the pictures, or maybe it's the fact that most people in HEMA, their first sport was HEMA as an adult. Who knows? Maybe that they've got baggage from classical fencing or baggage from modern fencing by bad coaches. Maybe it's by good coaches who are bad for you. Who knows? Baggage is baggage. As you do the steps in, you hit that falling phase. I've landed. Sometimes landing middle weighted is intentional because I want to arrest and not allow my body to traverse further forwards. This could be for various reasons. As long as I'm choosing. We have actions where maybe as I've presented, I've gone to subject, they've pushed through, and I yield my point through and I step in. Oh no, his point's offline, who gives a fuck? And I step in, and I get a nice disarm. Or I've subjected, they've disengaged over, and then I've got to cock that elbow in to brace against it, lift, and get the cute disarm in. these things only are allowed to flower out if, as I land, I'm already freeing the other foot. If I land in a way that doesn't free the other foot from being able to choose to act, I'm fucked. The funniest way to do it, or the funniest way to envision the cue for it, or to have an idea for it, is, you know when beginners do a lunge and drag their rear foot? That is because they are smarter than your average fencing teacher. Because they don't want to blow up their fucking knee. It bleeds the force out and it bleeds the momentum out instead of arresting it. And if I want to continue and proceed upon someone, because Thibault's circles tell you how to proceed and hit someone hilariously. Maybe he read Fatwas. If I arrest in like this, then to choose to drag my rear foot, like a lot of the actions say to, I would have to then choose to unfuck myself and get that foot going. That's a whole tempo. Your friend will hit you. But if I land in a way that frees the rear foot, I'm still a tempo ahead of when most people are. So I'm able to step, lunge, and circle through. I'm able to step, choose, step. Almost all actions in Tibo will tell you to move the other foot after the first one lands. So always move it. Always continue yourself going. This will also show with if I step and land the shot here. I don't actually have the depth of blade interaction to deal with the other person. But I get to hear, just in the act of bringing the other foot forwards and having it free as I do it, in the time that my foot has hit the ground and I'm rolling through it, my torso, my shoulder, my sword can be up to this much closer at the same time as if I went shoot. So I can go shoot. And all of a sudden I can work off my landing phase, lifting phase, mid-flight, land, lift. And they can all have no arrests in between them. And the other person feels like you are incredibly fast because you're making mistakes at a lower rate than most people ever make actions. And you're able to punish them for it. These are, hopefully this helps you look at Tibo and go, oh, all right, this is what he's saying. Or not. Maybe this is my headcanon because I wanted to be able to win with it. And maybe I've just said it all to myself. That would also be very funny.